Taking a look then onto the essay sections of both tests, and then we'll talk a little bit about the science for the ACT, and then that'll probably be it for today. The SAT essay is very new, and it is really an old essay type taken from the AP Language and Composition. They give you an essay, you have to read the essay, and then you have to analyze what the author is doing in that. Why did they choose to use so much figurative language? Why did they choose to use these statistics? Why did they choose to use these quotes from experts? Why did they choose to use hyperbole in a given paragraph? They want you to identify those things that the author is doing and then explain why the author chose to use those techniques in the context of his or her overall goal. So, it's not hard, but it does take some practice. And so I've got here a real general summation of what they're looking for. Figures of speech, slippery slopes. If we don't stop this, then this is going to happen. Mistakes or oversights that they may have found in their argument or in other people's arguments that they bring up. And then good points that are used to really persuade the reader of the main overall goal. So I have here almost a breakdown of what you should be thinking about writing, word by word, sentence by sentence. If you go and you go to the College Board website for the SAT and you look at these practice essays, you'll see essays that get top scores and they just have a 1 or 2 sentence introduction. What it is in his or her essay, Jane Smith explores the issue or shares his opinion or argues for her position that people should do this, that people should not do that countries should do this. Remember that the goal of an author in these essays is to persuade the reader of something, and they want you to identify that main large goal at the beginning of your essay and then explain how the verbal, rhetorical, literary techniques, whatever you want to call it, how they play into the author achieving their goal. So the main goal of the author is to convince, persuade, explain, problematize, raise issues with the reader's understanding or convince them to accept that this is the right way to go, that we should do this, that we shouldn't do that. So what you're saying is the author tries to explain something in order that the reader understands that we should do something or not do something else. That's pretty much the introduction. After that, you can start the body paragraphs with the author uses hyperbole or colorful language or statistics or appeals to ethos or pathos in order to get the reader to personally feel connected to the issue, to intellectually trust the author as an expert, to find themselves more worried or concerned about the consequences of inaction. But you're trying to explain what the technique does in terms of advancing the author's goals. And keep in mind, it has to be anchored on focusing on the reader, so the effect on the reader, to persuade the reader, to dissuade the reader, to engage the reader, to make the reader concerned. But you always want to say the author does X to have this effect on the reader as the start to your paragraph, something to that effect, and then you list the examples and you explain how they show the author's intended goals with the usage of that particular technique. Now, one issue that students often have is that, what am I coming up with? Like, I can maybe identify statistics, I can identify quotes, but what are they looking for here? And so here's just a brief list of some of the stuff that you might want to notice. So you have comparing and contrasting. The author compares this and contrasts that in order for the reader to understand that one particular path or solution has a lot of benefits versus a lot of costs. Metaphorical language, repetition of a point, lists show up a lot. We must be smart, wise, and careful. That kind of writing. By repeating points, the author creates a sense of emphasis while also showing that there is a breadth of good reasons to do a certain thing. Slippery slope arguments, the author says, we must stop this in order to prevent that. Cause and effect, first we must do this to achieve that. Repetition, especially of repeated lists of nouns or repeated examples. From the shores of Montezuma to the halls of, from the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, you have a repetition of form there, for example. And so just so you know, the test is not going to grade you for how technical your identified techniques are. You could say the author appeals to emotion. That's pretty simple. You don't have to say the author appeals to pathos. And you certainly don't have to get into, we have a hyperbolic use of litotic language here in the usage of understatement when the queen says, I am not amused. That's way more technical than what they're looking for. You don't have to get into that. You want to try and shoot for at least a page and a half, but keep in mind, longer scores better. It's an unfortunate correlation. It's the strongest correlation between score and any other factor on this test. I think organization is actually more important at the end of the day, but I do have to tell you, length does matter because of the idea that a strong writer can start early, can organize their thoughts almost on the fly, doesn't need too much time to actually organize or put out an outline. They can dive in quickly, they produce quickly, and you just wind up with more writing on the page with a stronger author relative to a weaker one. You want to shoot for 4 to 5 paragraphs of 5 to 6 sentences each. One less, one more is not in and of itself something that they are grading for, but it is something that, again, you want to try and write as much as you can and go from there. After that, ACT essay, 6-paragraph persuasive essay. ACT essay, much easier, I think, for most students than the SAT essay. SAT essay is very new. Who knows how colleges are using it? The vast majority of colleges do not require that right now because I think colleges just don't know what to do with it. ACT essay, very straightforward. It is a persuasive essay. They give you a topic, some problem in society, some issue that students might face in their everyday lives. They give you 3 perspectives on the issue, and the easiest thing is to pick one of them, defend that through your body paragraphs, then last paragraph before your conclusion, you want to address the other 2 positions, either show their weaknesses or address potential criticisms from people who hold those other 2 positions, and then a conclusion. So keep in mind, what you want, though, is make sure that you have a clear organization. So you have an introduction paragraph that starts with what is the topic, just rephrase the topic, summarize the 3 positions, and then give your thesis. If you can foreshadow the evidence you're going to use, that's going to be great. But the big thing is, what's the topic? What are the positions? What's your position? And then if you can, in that introduction, foreshadow the examples you're going to use. So 5 goals of education. I'm sorry, I wasn't careful enough on this slide. They've moved away from very education-focused problems, things students would encounter in their everyday lives. You might run into in education, but things now are like automation in society, global warming, achieving a more diverse workplace, accommodating people with disabilities and more jobs, all sorts of stuff that occur across broad society are now where the ACT is going. Grammar is not a concern on this test or the SAT essay unless you're making systematic and repeated errors across the whole essay. You misspell a word, you have a comma in the wrong place, an apostrophe shouldn't have been there. The readers don't care about that. They care about, do you know how grammar works at all? After that, one thing that I want to add here, and again, I apologize, I should have added this on this slide, you can totally make up facts on the ACT essay. You are not being graded in any way, shape, or form about the truth of the examples you use. This is a composition test. They're testing your ability to construct an essay because, quite frankly, if you're taking this the beginning of your senior year, just let's say within 12 months, you're going to be taking a college exam where you have to write out an essay answer. They want to know you at least know how to put an essay together. They don't care about the facts being true. They don't care if you say 87% of students, according to a study conducted by the New York Times, and it was actually 86, you're not going to lose any points on that. That's not what they care about. Use examples that are truthy, that are similar to what you would use if you did have time to research the issue, but don't get bogged down in, I don't know any statistics or science about this. They don't care. They just want to know that you can use statistics and other types of evidence as if you did have time to research it. So the essay is read by 2 readers in under 2 minutes each. They then give their scores. If the scores are off by more than a point, it goes to a 3rd reader. That's how it's scored. So keep in mind, your readers are not spending a whole lot of time on this. In fact, they are required to get it done in under 2 minutes, and they are instructed not to reread. So if they don't get it through on the first time, they are told to ignore it. So that's a reminder. Handwriting is not something that they grade on, but if your handwriting is so bad they can't even read it, they're not going to try to very hard. So do try to make sure you write carefully enough that somebody else is able to read your handwriting. Again, length, more is better than less on these essays, and you want to try and shoot for at least 2 pages on them.